Howdy, my name is Nonat, and this video is so overdue it's not even worth making a joke about. This is the Wizard Deep Dive for Pathfinder 2nd Edition, and I should have made this literally almost 2 years ago. And this is actually the last class guide, which is wild to me, and maybe that's why it's taken so long to get to. I didn't want to wrap up this series because there's nothing else to go over. I guess I could go back and just talk about the Alchemist again in a never-ending loop, but that wouldn't be fun. All good things must come to an end until the next class comes out, so until then, let's talk about the Wizard. The Wizard is your classic intelligence-based caster.
Oh my goodness! I can't get through this. You know what? Cut, copy, paste, adjust, move, name, export, upload. You know, this over-the-top montage wouldn't have been possible without G Fuel Energy. Click the link in the description and use code NONAT at checkout to order some for yourself. My code will get you 20% off your order, and if you buy a starter kit, you're going to get 30% off, so there's no better time to try it. Get yourself some G Fuel today.
The Wizard is your classic intelligence-based caster, 1d6 plus con mod hit points per level. It is the spellcaster. If you couldn't tell by the name Wizard, that's what they do. Trained in perception checks, trained in fortitude saves, trained in reflex saves, and only expert in will saves, much like a lot of other spellcasters, the Wizard is quite squishy and easily killed. They are trained in Arcana and 2 plus intelligence modifier in additional skills, which, you're a wizard, it's going to be at least 16, so you're starting with at least 5 or 6 skills. They are also trained in the least number of weapons in the game, not even all simple weapons, only clubs, crossbows, daggers, heavy crossbows, and stabs, whatever. And of course unarmed strikes, though I'd like to see a wizard who can punch you really good. It can be done. I joke, but it can absolutely be done. They're also, of course, not trained in any armor, but they are at least trained in unarmored defense, meaning if they have a decent enough dexterity score, they could actually have an okay armor class at level 1, at least 15-16. And the most surprising part, wizards are trained in arcane spell attacks and DCs. Wow. This is going to be a weird class deep dive, because of all the classes in Pathfinder 2e, wizards are probably the most vanilla, even more so than fighters. Because Pathfinder 2e is so feat-focused, but spellcasters tend to rely less on feats, there's not going to be a whole lot to talk about, except when it comes to the subclasses. And that's exactly where we're going to start. Sure, they get arcane spellcasting, they're a prepared spellcaster, whoop-de-doo, but at level 1, wizards get not 1, but they actually get 2 different subclasses. I made a video on it a long time ago if you want to go check that out, about why I'm not the biggest fan of wizard subclasses, but I do like the flavor they're going for. And the first one they're going for is your Arcane School. Now, your Arcane School selection is a big deal because you're going to get a single bonus spell slot of every single spell level all the way through 9th. However, it can only be used to cast spells of your chosen school. If you choose Evocation, that extra spell slot per day can only be used to prepare Evocation spells. Additionally, and this is super cool, every arcane school comes with a unique focus spell for the wizard. So every single wizard of every single school gets a focus point to start with and a unique spell unavailable to other wizards. And yes, we will be going over all of those spells in this video. What's interesting about wizards in Pathfinder 2e compared to 1st edition, though, is that wizards no longer have opposition schools. Back in 1st edition, if you picked a specific school, you would have to pick 2 schools that you could not cast with. However, now, you just get really good at one school, and all of the other schools are still available to you. There is still a universalist option, but we'll go over that in the end. Starting off, the School of Abjuration gets you one new Abjuration spell in your spellbook, and you get the Protective Ward school spell. Starting right off the bat, Protective Ward is my argument for the single best focus spell of any of the wizard schools, and that's because this is Bless for armor class. For one action, you emit a 5-foot emanation that improves you and your allies' armor class by +1. It's a status bonus. And every time you sustain the spell, you expand the emanation up to 30 feet, meaning within 2 or 3 turns, you can cover your entire party with just a flat +1 armor class. Abjuration is the school of protection magic, and they couldn't have picked a more protective spell. The Conjuration School gives you a Conjuration level 1 spell and the Augment Summoning school spell. Augment Summoning is also freaking incredible. For one action, you target a creature you have summoned that has the minion trait, and it gets +1 to everything. Attack rolls, saving throws, armor class, any DCs it might have. This is such an incredible spell, and it helps all of your summons keep up with you. Pathfinder 2e has somewhat of a rough issue, where summoned creatures really heavily fall behind because you can only summon creatures up to a certain number of levels below the spell. But with Augment Summoning, you're effectively giving your summon +1 level, and it's not even sustained. One time, one action, level up your summon. Super rad. The only downside is because summons take 3 actions to cast, you have to do this on the following turn. Divination gives Diviner's Sight. Diviner's Sight is like a choose-your-own advantage, but only for saving throws and skill checks. You pick a creature within 30 feet and enchant them with Diviner's Sight. Now, you roll a d20 and set that result aside. Let's say you roll a 15, you set that 15 aside. The enchanted creature, in the next round, whenever it would make a saving throw or a skill check, can choose to use the face of your dice. So it's not so much advantage, but choosing between a guaranteed number and rolling a random number. If this gets anything above an 11, I'd say it's almost always worth using because that's better than average. The downside with Diviner's Sight is 50% of the time, it's gonna be useless because you'll roll less than a 10, and people tend to not want to settle for less than a 10. It's also unfortunate this has to be for skill checks and saving throws only and can't be used for attack rolls. The School of Enchantment gets Charming Words, which is one of the best self-crowd controls I've ever seen for a one-action focus spell. For this one-action focus spell, you choose a creature and it makes a will save. If the creature fails, it cannot make any hostile actions towards you until the start of your next turn. And if it crit fails, it's stunned 1, so it loses an action and then also can't take hostile actions towards you. This basically means if they fail their save, they gotta go bother somebody else. Even if they succeed their saving throw, they take a -1 to attack rolls and damage rolls against you. Now that's not all world ending, but that's not a success. The biggest thing holding this back, which holds a lot of spells back, is the incapacitation trait. If you use this spell on a creature that is higher level than you, they will bump their saving throw result up 1 stage, meaning the best you're probably going to see out of this is -1 to attack rolls against you. But hey, if you're hanging back and that little goblin warrior has waltzed his way up to you, you can take a step back, Charming Words, and say go play with somebody else. Force Bolt for the Evocation Wizard would be a lot stronger in a system that required concentration checks. It's a one-action magic missile. For one action and a focus point, you deal 1d4 plus 1 force damage to a target, and it only heightens every 2 spell levels, which means up through character level 4, this is only dealing 1d4 plus 1. Now, it's a single action, it's a focus point so you can get it back, and it automatically hits and never misses, plus force damage. It'd be broken if it heightened every spell level, dealing, 2d4 plus 1, plus 2 without missing at level 3 would be kind of nuts, but it's fine. Like I said, if this was like D&D 5th edition, where if you take damage, you need to concentrate or lose your spell, this would be a lot better. Was that 3.5? I play like every system and they all melt together in my head. But regardless, in Pathfinder 2e, damage doesn't interrupt sustained spells, so this is just cheap, free damage. Warped Terrain, possibly the weakest focus spell for wizards. It's not terrible. For 1 to 3 actions, you turn a small burst of ground into illusional that's not a word, illusory difficult terrain. Creatures that fail to disbelieve it will move through it as though it were difficult terrain at 5 extra feet per square. I feel like difficult terrain is not as good as people think it is in Pathfinder 2e, because more actions can be spent to move. Back in 1st edition or even D&D 5e, when you only get the one move action, it's a lot rougher to spend half of it on movement. But when you can just spend a second action to move through it, most creatures can move like 50 feet in a turn. So even if you use this and cost them an extra 10 or 15 feet, they can probably still reach you. If you cast it using 3 actions, you can make it as big as a 15-foot burst, which is 6 squares across, so that would technically mean they need to spend 60 feet to cross it, so this might be useful in the right situation, but it's a lot harder to use effectively compared to the other wizard school spells. Also at character level 7, you can use it in the air to put difficult terrain in the sky to affect flying creatures. That's kinda cool. Necromancy's Call of the Grave is absolutely incredible, and there's a reason it's one of, if not the only focus spell for wizards that costs 2 actions. For those 2 actions and a focus point, you make a spell attack roll against a creature within 30 feet. If it hits, they're sickened 1. If it crits, they're sickened 2 and slowed 1, as long as they're sickened. If you don't know what sickened does, it gives you a penalty to everything, attack rolls, armor class, saving throws, for as long as you're sickened equal to the value. And you can't get rid of sickened unless you spend an action retching against the same DC that inflicted it, in this case your spell DC. What a critically successful Call of the Grave means is they take -2 to everything. They level down effectively 2 levels. They're slowed 1, meaning they only get 2 actions per turn. And if they want to try to get rid of it, they need to spend those actions retching at a -2 penalty. Oh, and if they succeed, they're only getting rid of 1 level of sickened. They would need to succeed twice their entire turn just to get rid of sickened. This spell is amazing if you hit. And the final one for transmutation is Physical Boost, which is kind of a lackluster ending to these focus spells. For 1 action, you pick a target within 30 feet. Sorry, you have to touch them, not even 30 feet, and they get a +2 to their next acrobatics, athletics, fortitude save, or reflex save until the end of their next turn. Now, this is more useful out of combat. If someone needs to climb something or jump across a ravine, that's honestly really useful. I guess it can also help to make someone a little bit better at tripping or grappling somebody in the middle of combat, but especially being a touch spell, it's a lot more niche than the others. And if you opt not to take any of the arcane schools, you can instead be a universalist wizard. This is a little bit rough because you don't get the extra spell slot per level, but you do get drain bonded item once for each level instead of just once per day, so it's kind of the same thing. Universalist wizards at the end of the day get a net 1 less spell per day, which isn't bad. But in return, they do get an extra 1st level class feat, of which there is 1 correct choice. And we'll get to that. But if you've seen this channel long enough, you know what it is. Now, as I mentioned, wizards have 2 subclasses to choose from. We just covered the first one, their arcane school, but every wizard has to actually go to that school, and in order to graduate, you need your arcane thesis. This is one of the most out-of-nowhere subclasses I've ever seen in Pathfinder 2e, and it's in the core rulebook, and I love it. This unique to you thesis that you've experimented with to manipulate magic. Wizards, sure, wizards are the spellcasters. They cast spells. So it makes sense that especially even farther forward in the history of the Pathfinder world, wizards are now starting to bend the rules of magic. And that's what your arcane thesis is all about. Starting off, the first option for an arcane thesis is improved familiar attunement. This makes you a witch. No, this gives you a familiar free of charge, and it gets additional familiar abilities. One extra ability compared to normal familiars of that level, and an additional extra ability at levels 6, 12, and 18. Additionally, your Drain Bonded Item feature gets replaced by Drain Familiar, which does the exact same thing. Your familiar just stores your extra magic instead of your item. Which, yeah, I guess I didn't go over Drain Bonded Item. As a free action once per day, you get back a spell you've cast. Simple as that. But yeah, if you're gonna have a familiar as a wizard, improved familiar attunement is not a bad idea. There are some tasty familiar and master abilities, and as you get higher in level, you're gonna want more of them, so getting extra slots on your familiar for free ain't bad. Metamagical experimentation is super cool in theory, but it's a lot more restricted than it sounds in practice. Right at level 1, you get a free first level metamagic wizard feat, which usually comes down to wider spell or longer spell. And that's all you get until character level 4. Starting at 4th character level, during your daily preparations, you get another bonus feat every single day, but it has to be a metamagic feat equal to no more than half your level. What does that mean at level 4? Well, it means if you picked Widen Spell, you're probably getting Reach Spell. The hard part about recommending this subclass is that a lot of the coolest metamagic is like level 10 and above, and since you can't take anything more than half your level, you're never going to get to take those metamagic feats with your subclass. The subclass honestly just does not have enough metamagic support, even with the release of things like Secrets of Magic. Spell blending is one of the coolest subclasses, but unfortunately it also suffers from not getting to do much until higher levels. The way spell blending works is during your daily preparations, you can sacrifice 2 slots of one level of spell to get 1 slot 1 level higher. For example, if you're level 3 and you can cast second level spells, you can sacrifice 2 of your first level daily spell slots to get an additional second level spell slot. So sure, it's a net loss of 1 slot, but the slot you gain is more powerful. This lets you really decide if you want to be a sort of spam-happy low-level caster, or get a few more of those chunky, hard-hitting spells, maybe not casting spells quite as often, but hitting hard when you do. You can also only do this once per day per spell slot, so you can't trade away all of your first level slots for additional second level slots. Also, if you ever feel like it, you can sacrifice 1 spell slot of any level to prepare 2 additional cantrips. Also not bad. Spell substitution is fine. I just really struggle to recommend it. You can spend 10 minutes to replace one of your prepared spells with another. Is this going to help you in a combat situation? Absolutely not. Is this going to help you in a roleplay situation that you are going into and you prepared the wrong spells that day? Absolutely. If you need Charm Person, but you didn't prepare Charm Person, well, guess what? You can spend 10 minutes being a nerd, and now you have Charm Person. It's honestly very, very useful. The best part, honestly, is that it's not once per day. You can do this as many times as you want, as long as you take 10 minutes per time, meaning this lets you be a much more flexible wizard. And aside from flavor, I think my issue here is why not just play a sorcerer? And the final thesis is the single most complicated one and was released in the Advanced Player's Guide, and that is the Staff Nexus thesis. I'm worried I'm still going to explain this wrong, but I'm going to try. So, the big part of this subclass doesn't come in until levels 8 and higher, but what it does do is allow you to start with what it calls a makeshift staff. This is basically a really crummy magical staff. It contains a cantrip and a first level spell that you already know how to cast. Now, unlike a normal staff, which gains some free charges daily, your makeshift staff does not, and you must sacrifice spells to give it charges. 1 charge for a first level spell, 2 charges for a second level spell, etc. What this basically means is this staff is useless until level 3, but once you are level 3, you can start sacrificing a second level spell slot to put 2 charges into your staff. Now that staff can cast 2 extra first level spells because it has 2 charges. This is almost the opposite of spell blending. Spell blending is sacrificing multiple lower level slots for higher level slots, whereas Staff Nexus is about sacrificing higher level slots for more lower level slots. Now, like I said, once you're level 8, the subclass actually starts to kind of work. Most people, when preparing a staff, can only sacrifice one spell slot to give it charges. However, at level 8 and then again at level 16, you gain the ability to sacrifice an extra spell slot, meaning at level 16, you can sacrifice 3 slots to give it a bunch of charges, meaning if you're level 16, you can cast 8th level spells, and you sacrifice 3 8th level spell slots, well, your staff suddenly has 24 charges, which you can use on 2nd, 3rd, or even 1st level spells. If you're like level 5, and you just want to cast a bunch of magic missiles, sacrifice a 3rd level spell slot, that's 3 extra magic missile spells that day, and you just kind of become a machine gun. The final benefit that I think a lot of people overlook, including me until this video, is the ability to craft your makeshift staff into any other staff for the new staff's usual cost. Now, where this gets a bit blurry is it does use craft as a capitalized word, meaning I think it means the action, which means you need to spend 4 days crafting it and then make a crafting check. I can't tell if you actually have to do that or if the bonus for this subclass is the ability to just upgrade your staff. But what is cool is the first level spell and cantrip you originally had do carry over into that new type of staff, and once you have upgraded it into a normal staff, it does gain bonus charges per day equal to your highest level spell slot on top of the spell slot you choose to sacrifice. Long story short, if you want to play a machine gun wizard, Staff Nexus is the way to go. Okay, that's subclasses. Holy cow, this is taking longer than I thought, but I've also realized how much I missed these videos. I haven't made a class guide over a core rulebook class in forever, and I forgot how much I love this. Why aren't there more core classes? Let's talk class features, which it's a spellcaster, they're super simple. Skill feats at level 2, wizard feat at level 2, general feat at level 3, skill increase at level 3. It's all pretty standard. Ability boost at level 5, ancestry feat at level 5, expert in reflex saves at level 5, expert in spellcasting at level 7, expert in fortitude saves at level 9. Sorry this is going so fast. Wizards don't get class features. Expert in perception at level 11, expert in weapons at level 11, expert in unarmed defense at level 13. Yeah, you're rocking trained until level 13. Don't get hit. You get your weapon specialization at level 13, so your darts deal an extra 2 points of damage, and then you get master spellcasting at level 15. Your will saves improve to master at level 17, and that's the only time they get an auto crit success feature on a saving throw, only at level 17. And finally at level 19, you get your big fancy Capstone, which is a 10th level spell slot. Yeah, aside from legendary spellcasting and the 10th level spell slot, they don't really get anything unique from their class features. They pretty much just get base proficiency increases, which, you know, that's what a wizard is. A wizard is their spellbook. They're not much else. Alright, time to talk wizard feats, which should honestly probably take like 15 minutes, because they're kinda super simple. Starting with Counterspell, which is incredibly complicated. I'm not going over it here. Counterspell, you can counter spells. It's a little bit complicated. I made a video like a year and a half ago. Go watch that if you want to know how it works. It's going to be up here, damn it. Wait, I forget if it flips now or if it... It's somewhere. Eschew Materials allows you to replace any material component with a somatic one by drawing symbols in the air. You know, like this is Disney Channel. This is either a great spell or a useless one. First off, it requires a free hand. If you're two-handing a quarterstaff, you can't use Eschew Materials. Second, most campaigns don't keep track of materials anymore. Even the book recommends just having a component pouch. The only time this is useful is if you get robbed and your component pouch is no longer on your person, and that's when you can finally say, I have Eschew Materials. I don't care if I'm naked on the beach. I can still cast a magic missile. Familiar. You get a familiar. It's not as strong as the familiar you get with the subclass. And now we come to the single best spell in the entirety of the Pathfinder 2nd Edition system, and you will not tell me otherwise. Hand of the Apprentice is the only reason you ever take the Universalist Wizard. It gets you an extra first level class feat, and you use that to pick Hand of the Apprentice. For one action, you hurl a melee weapon you are currently holding up to 500 feet away. No one talks about this except me, but 500 feet range on a level 1 focus spell. And you get to make it a spell attack roll, not a ranged or melee attack roll. So it doesn't matter what you're throwing, you're rolling with your highest attack modifier. Also, you get to add your spellcasting modifier to damage. So you huck your wooden club at someone at, +7 to hit, and it hits them for 1d6 plus 4 from your intelligence modifier. It can critically hit, and right at level 1, it can apply the weapon specialization effect, and it'll fly right back into your hand. All for one action! Can we talk about this? I want to do some science real quick. This thing is flying upwards of 1,000 feet in 2 seconds. One action of your 3 actions is 2 of your 6 seconds. It can fly 500 feet away and right back to your hand. How fast? That's 500 feet a second. There's about 5,300 feet in a mile. That's like an 11-second mile. Hold on, how fast is that? 3,600 seconds in an hour divided by 11. That is 327 miles per hour. And it deals d6 plus 4 damage. This thing is going faster than a bullet train! What? Reach spell. Your spell with a range gets 30 extra feet of range if you spend an action to use the meta magic. And widen spell. Your burst gets an extra 5-foot radius, or your line gets an extra 10-foot reach, or your cone gets an extra 5-foot reach. Cantrip expansion. 2 extra cantrips a day. Now that there's way more cantrips in the game, this gets better and better every time a new book comes out. Conceal spell is okay, and for being level 2, I understand why it's balanced this way. For 1 action meta magic before you cast a spell, you have to roll a stealth check to hide it. Meaning, this meta magic almost isn't doing anything magical. I guess it's supposed to be suppressing the glow and everything of utilizing your magic, but it kind of feels bad that if you didn't take stealth, this is useless. And, by the way, if it has a verbal component, you also need to roll deception and stealth and pass both of them to actually hide it. And even if you pass both of those, if the spell originates from you in some obvious way, people still see that. It makes a mention that, if a ray shoots out of your fingertip, people can still see the ray coming from you, even though you concealed the spell. Overall, it's really clunky. It's not even that useful. It's really useful, I guess, for, summoning or, little enchantments that just pop up on a person. But if it can be traced to you in any way, Conceal Spell won't help you out. I get why it shouldn't just be an auto-concealment, but it still feels bad that you took a feat that requires you to have 2 skill proficiencies to even use it. Enhanced Familiar. Your Familiar gets 4 abilities per day instead of 2, or if you took the Familiar subclass, you can have 5 abilities at level 2. That's honestly phenomenal. That might be better than the Witch. Bespell Weapon, the Magus before the Magus was a Magus. As a free action, if you cast a spell that utilized a spell slot, you can imbue a weapon you're holding until the start of your next turn. End of your current turn. For the rest of that turn, your weapon deals 1d6 bonus damage depending on the school of magic. A lot of them just deal force damage, but Necromancy makes it deal negative damage, Conjuration makes it do the same damage as it was already doing, but it's all just a net bonus 1d6 damage. This is useful, I guess, if, you cast a saving throw spell like Fear, and then you have, a sling in the other hand to throw an imbued rock. That would be kind of cool. It's honestly really niche, though. I tried so hard back when the game was new to try to make a build around Bespell Weapon, but especially because it doesn't scale any stronger, it's just not that useful. The fact that even at level 20, it's only 1d6 bonus damage, Bespell Weapon just never pops off. Linked Focus is absolutely nuts. When you drain your bonded item to get a spell slot back, you also get a focus point back. Meaning on one turn, you could throw out a fireball and then your school spell. And on the next turn, free action, get them both back and do it again. Linked Focus is amazing. Silent Spell, it requires Conceal Spell as a prerequisite, and it's both better and worse than Conceal Spell. You no longer need to make a deception check to hide your voice. Your voice is actually magically softened, but it can't be hidden. This is not the same as Conceal Spell. You're still doing your big fancy hand gestures with Silence Spell. You just can't hear the words they're saying while they're casting it. So if anyone's looking at you, they just see Fireball. It's useful if you're in hiding or someone doesn't know you're there, but overall, once again, it's very situational, and I hate that Conceal Spell is a prerequisite. Spell Penetration is a feat I actually forgot existed. In my last stream, I was talking about never seeing something like this before, but lo and behold, it's in the core rulebook. Permanently, you don't have to activate this or anything, any creature who has a bonus to saving throws against your spells reduces their bonus by 1. This does not inflict a penalty, but it reduces a bonus. Fascinating. I don't know how I swear I've never read this spell before. But here we are. Steady spellcasting. If someone's attack of opportunity would interrupt your spellcasting, you have a 1 in 4 chance of not losing the spell. It's a little rough to invest an entire class feat into a situation which might not happen, and then still have a 1 in 4 chance of it actually working. Kind of feels bad. I feel like just lowering everyone else's saving throw bonuses by 1 against your magic is just better. Advanced school spells! We got a whole new list of focus spells, everybody! I kind of forgot this feat existed. This video is going to be longer than I thought. Conjuration wizards get energy absorption. As a reaction, if you would take energy damage, that's electric, acid, cold, or fire, you instantly gain resistance 15 to that damage type. So it's basically just a reaction to reduce energy damage against you. It's nice that this is a focus spell. You could do this potentially 2 or 3 times in a fight. You're level 8. Fireballs are going to be slinging around, so if you take 25 damage from a fireball, let's say you make your saving throw and you reduce that 25 to a 12, boom, energy absorption, you take absolutely no damage. Not bad. Goes up by 5 every spell level, and focus spells scale with you automatically. Level 20, this is giving you, 45 resistance? Great. Huh. Did you know that teleport is conjuration? Because I sure didn't. But Dimensional Steps, the advanced focus spell for the Conjuration School, is a mini teleport. For 1 action and a focus point, you teleport 20 feet away. Every spell level up after this, the teleport distance increases 5 feet. That's fine. It's only somatic, which is unfortunately the bad one. If this were verbal, you wouldn't even be able to get interrupted most of the time. But somatic components are often what trigger attacks of opportunity, so using this to teleport away from that enemy barbarian might not work. Diviners unfortunately just get clairvoyance, but as a focus spell, and then when the spell would end, they can spend a focus point to keep it going for another hour. It's not bad by any means, but clairvoyance is already an arcane spell. You can already prepare that. Oh, the big difference is that clairvoyance lasts 10 minutes, vigilant eye lasts an hour. Okay, that's fair. This is useful if you're going down into a dungeon and you just want to put this at the front door of the dungeon to keep an eye on things. Alright, that's actually pretty cool. The Enchantment School gets probably the strongest focus spell in the game. For 2 actions, you emit a 30-foot emanation, and all enemies in the area are frightened 1. No saving throw, and it doesn't go away at the end of each turn. You need to sustain it every turn, but as long as they are in your aura, they are frightened 1. If they exit the aura, it doesn't go away until the end of their turn. And if you just walk close enough to put them back in your aura, they are frightened 1. That's insane. Evocation wizards get a really interesting meta magic, Elemental Tempest. For 1 action, if your next spell is to cast a spell that deals energy damage, cold, electric, fire, whatever, you surround yourself in a 10-foot emanation of that type of energy, dealing 1d6 damage per spell level of the spell cast of the same type of damage you're casting. You're throwing out a level 3 fireball, then everything around you takes 3d6 fire damage as you cast it. Additionally, it's only foes, so if the fighter is right next to you and you use this meta magic, the enemies around you take the damage, but your fighter's fine. Whoa, is there no saving throw? Hold on, whoa! There's no saving throw. It's just foes in the area take. That's wild! So you're level 8, you have 4th level spells. You can just cast a 4th level spell to deal 4d6 damage around you for 1 focus point. And if you're targeting them, wow! That's insane! Why have I never seen this before? Have I not done my research on this game? Probably. And then the poor illusionists. They get 2nd level invisibility. It lasts a minute. And then once they're character level 11, it lasts 10 minutes. And then once they're character level 15, it lasts an hour. They just get invisibility. That's all it does. Necromancers get Life Siphon, which is like fine but really unexciting. As a reaction, if you cast a necromancy spell with a spell slot, you regain 1d8 hit points per level of the spell. What is nice about this? There's no limitation. There's no once per day or once per hour. Just every time you cast necromancy spells, you heal, and you're a wizard, so you don't have many reactions anyway. So you can see this as healing 1d8 upwards of 4d8 damage every single turn, which ain't bad. Although it is a focus point, so you can only do it maybe 3 times per combat. And finally, transmutation wizards get shifting form. For 1 action, you get an ability for 1 minute. This ability can be 20-foot speed bonus, climb speed, swim speed, both of up to half your speed, dark vision, pair of 1d8 agile finesse slashing claws, or 60-foot imprecise scent. This is not very exciting at all. And regardless of which school you are, you get to increase your focus pool by 1 point. Yay! Bond conservation is really cool. It gives you a second use of drain bonded item to get a spell back. However, it's very restrictive. First off, it costs an action just to activate bond conservation. Then, you drain bonded item and cast the spell using it. Now, until the end of your next turn, you can use Drain Bonded Item again to cast a spell up to 2 levels lower than your highest level spell slot. So you Drain Bonded Item and Bond Conservation. Then you cast a 4th level Fireball. Until the end of your next turn, you have time to Drain Item again, and then cast a 1st or 2nd level spell, assuming 4th level spells are your highest available slot. Oh, it's actually dependent on the spell you cast, not your highest. So if you cast a 3rd level spell with Drain Bonded Item, no matter what level you are, the follow-up spell would only be able to be 1st level. I hope that made sense. That's a complicated one. And then the Universalist Wizard is not that exciting at level 8. You get Universal Versatility. Every day during daily preparations, you pick one of the 1st level school spells from any of the specialist schools, so it's fine. You basically get to pick from any of the, I think it's 8 different spells, but you get them 7 levels later, but they are focus spells, so they do scale with you. So something like Force Bolt will still be useful. It's cool. It kind of just gives you more options, which is what Universalist Wizards are about, so I can't be mad at it. Overwhelming Energy. This 1-action meta magic augments your next spell you cast that turn as long as it's dealing energy damage. The target of that spell reduces their resistance to that spell's damage by your level. So you cast a spell that deals energy damage at level 10, and the target has 10 less resistance against that spell. That took me like 6 takes. I don't know why that was so hard to say. The cool part of this is that it affects everything the spell does. If the spell inflicts persistent damage, it reduces their resistance against all of that persistent damage. It's great. Quicken Casting. As a free action, once per day, you can cast a spell of 2 levels lower than your highest level slot for 1 action. It's cool, but I always struggle to recommend taking something like this that is a once per day thing, but this does mean you can go fireball, and that's fun. Scroll Savant is an awesome way to share your magic with the team. You do need to be expert in crafting, but during your daily preparations, you create 2 spell scrolls. These can be of any spell from your spellbook up to 2 levels lower than your max spell slot, and they do have to be from 2 different spell levels. But what's cool is they function like normal scrolls. They lose their magic at the end of the day, but anybody who can cast scrolls can cast them. So you can hand them out to your sorcerer, or your bard, or whatever, if it's also an occult spell. It's really cool. Once you have master spellcasting, you can create 3 scrolls per day, and once you have legendary spellcasting, you can create 4 scrolls per day. It's also just free spell slots. Clever Counterspell is really hard to explain without knowing what Counterspell is, but the TLDR is, to counter a spell, you need to have that spell prepared. To counter someone's Fireball, you need to have prepared Fireball. Clever Counterspell allows you to do that as long as the spell is in your spellbook. If they cast Fireball and you didn't prepare Fireball, but you know Fireball, you can still counteract it. This counteract check does have a -2 penalty, but if you expend a spell that is justifiably awesome, the GM can handwave the -2. Like if someone's shooting a fireball and you expend Cone of Cold to nullify it, the GM might be like, you're super cool, have a hero point, and also I'm buying you dinner. Or just don't take a -2. Magic Sense. You are permanently affected by a first level detect magic spell, and if you are taking the Seek action, it upgrades to 3rd level. Basically what that means is you can always tell when something around you is magical, and if you're actively seeking, you can tell what the strongest source of magic is. Bonded Focus. If you spent 2 focus points, you can refocus and get 2 back instead of 1. Reflect Spell is the only thing in the game that makes Counterspell worth taking, but if you successfully counterspell something, the caster suffers the effects. It will never be an area of effect. If they throw out a fireball, they'll be the only ones taking 6d6 damage, but that would still feel so good. An enemy wizard starts casting a spell, you say no you, and they just erupt in a gout of their own flame. So freaking cool. Superior Bond. You can drain bonded item a 2nd time per day, but it can only be used on a spell up to 2 levels lower than your max slot. I'm seeing a pattern. Effortless Concentration. Once per turn, you can sustain a spell as a free action, meaning it's now possible to sustain 2 spells at once and still get off a 2-action spell every single turn. Spell Tinker is a fascinating little feat. For 2 actions, if you are currently affected by a spell that has multiple options upon being cast, you can retroactively change the choice you made. Let's say you used animal form and turned into a bear. For 2 actions, you could change into a wolf. This does not use another spell slot, it does not extend the duration, but you just get to swap to a different form. Really cool, really useful to get more out of your spells without utilizing more resources. Infinite Possibilities. You select 1 spell slot of any level, up to 2 levels lower than your maximum, that holds infinite potential. When you use that spell slot, you can cast any spell from your spellbook that is usable with that level. Really cool, kind of gives you 1 sorcerer spell slot, which, when you have a full spellbook of spells, is kind of rad. Re-Prepare Spell is honestly kind of amazing, albeit a little bit limited. You can spend 10 minutes to re-prepare a spell you cast. It can only be up to 4th level, but that means that 4th level fireball you used last combat, spend 10 minutes, be a nerd, go to the library, boom, you've got that 4th level fireball back. If you specifically have the Spell Substitution Arcane Thesis, you can prepare a different spell in that slot. You don't have to re-prepare Fireball, you could prepare a Magic Missile or something, because I don't know spells. An interesting caveat is that once you have re-prepared a spell into a slot once, you can only further re-prepare spells into slots that don't have durations. I think this is to prevent you from being like, haste, 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 or any other long form, like 10-minute or 2-hour long spell effect to just stack infinitely forever on all of your party members. I just realized I ignored the entire APG list of feats, so before we get to the level 20 capstones, let's go back through the levels in the Advanced Player's Guide. Spellbook Prodigy. If you are really unconfident in your dice rolls to learn spells, Spellbook Prodigy might be for you. First off, when you study a scroll to learn a new spell into your spellbook, you do it twice as fast. Additionally, if you crit fail, instead of never being able to learn that spell again, you can try again in 1 week. Pretty cool. Second level, Energy Ablation, 1-action meta magic that I do not find that useful. If you cast a spell that deals energy damage, acid, fire, cold, whatever, you gain resistance to that damage equal to the spell's level. My issue with feats like this is if you're using electric damage on something, it's probably not using electric damage back. If you're fighting a fire elemental that deals fire damage, you're not throwing out a fire spell to gain fire resistance. You know what I mean? You're usually using the opposite element if you can get away with it. So, it doesn't seem that useful. I guess if you're just facing an opposing magician and they know special magic and you know what they're going to cast, I guess you could do that, but it's very, very niche. Non-lethal spell. If your next spell you cast does not have the death or negative trait, you can make it non-lethal. Don't ask me how you make Fireball non-lethal, but you can. Call bonded item. For 1 action, you can teleport your bonded item into your hand as long as it is less than 1 mile away, and as long as it weighs less than 1 bulk. Or 1 bulk or less. Convincing Illusion is an awesome reaction, but you do need to be expert in deception. If a creature normal succeeds to disbelieve one of your illusions but doesn't critically succeed, you can use your reaction to roll deception to reconvince them, causing their confidence to falter, and they re-believe your illusion. I love this. Like, they just barely are able to start seeing through the fake terrain, and you're like, no, watch out for that rock, and they're like, oh, I guess it is difficult terrain, oh! Split shot's kinda cool. During your daily preparations, you can pick one spell slot of up to one spell level lower than your highest available slot, and prepare 2 different spells in the same slot. When you cast using that slot, you cast one spell or the other, and when you do, the unused spell disappears, meaning it can't be regained by, like, drain bonded item. Kinda cool. So if you don't know if you're gonna need Fireball or Magic Missile, you can put both of them in one spot, and then when you find yourself fighting something immune to fire, you just use Magic Missile and you don't need Fireball. Form retention is really hard to recommend. You can prepare any form spell, like Animal Form, using a spell slot 2 levels higher than its normal to increase the duration from 1 minute to 10 minutes. This is useful for something like Insect Form or something if you want to do recon, but this will never help you out in battle, which I don't know if it's supposed to. I guess just turning into a wolf for 10 minutes can sometimes be more useful than turning into a wolf for 1 minute, albeit off the top of my head, I can't think of any situations where. Diviner Sense. If you are detecting magic during the exploration phase and you enter combat, you get to roll initiative with advantage. Kinda cute. I don't know if that's worth a level 12 feat, but it's kinda cute. The downside is that it only works if your opponents have a magic item that would trigger your detect magic, which you're level 12. They probably do. Unless they're an animal. Forcible Energy is a 1-action meta magic that if your next spell casts and deals energy damage, you inflict the target of that spell with weakness 5 to that energy right before the spell connects. And this weakness lasts until the end of your next turn, so if you know your fighter has a Flame Tongue Firebrand weapon, that means you can shoot a flame arrow at them, use Forcible Energy, inflict a weakness 5 to fire, and now the fighter can also capitalize on that weakness, which is some super cool anime team-up. Second Chance spell should be super cool, but it's really, really hard to use effectively. If you specifically target a creature with specifically an enchantment school spell, and they specifically critically succeed, but until the end of your next turn, you can cast the spell again without using a spell slot, specifically on a different creature. So it has to be an enchantment spell. They have to critically succeed, and there has to be a second creature to target on your next turn. It has to still be applicable next turn. There's so many checkboxes for this to become useful, it's almost not worth it. Like, it's great to get another shot at your max level spell that just completely flopped, but it sucks that it has to be on the next turn and it has to check all of these different boxes. Spell Mastery. You get 4 extra spell slots per day, but they all need to belong to different levels of spell of 9th or lower. This means just by taking this feat, you get an extra 9th, 8th, 7th, and 6th level spell every single day, and holy cow, if you also have an Arcane School, you will have so many spells per day. You will never run out at this level. Archwizard's Might. You get a 10th level spell slot. A second one. Metamagic Mastery. You can cast Metamagic as a free action, which means you can move Metamagic and cast a spell. Really freeing. Sucks that it's at level 20. Sorry, I'm talking really fast. My phone's at like 3% battery and I want to get this done. Spell combination is really, really complicated, but I'll try to sum it up for you. Using slots of level 3 or higher, you can combine 2 spells into 1 slot. Now, both of these spells need to be at least 2 levels lower than the slot in question. So if you choose a 5th level spell slot, you can store 2 spells of 3rd level or lower in the same slot. They also need to share a target. They both need to have a spell attack roll, or they both need to call for a will save, something like that. But when you cast a spell using this special combined slot, you cast both of them at once, which means at level 20, you could prepare 2 7th level spells in 1 9th level spell slot and let them both out at the exact same time. But keep in mind, you are making 1 attack roll, or they're making 1 saving throw. If they critically succeed their saving throw, both spells fail. Or if you miss your attack roll, both spells miss. Lots of risk, lots of reward. And that's it. That's the last class. That's the last class guide until the Kineticist comes out like next August. I feel empty and hollow and my heart hurts because I've been doing these for like 2 years, but there's more to come, and maybe I'll find a new series to replace it in the near future. But that is it for me. Thank you all so much for sticking around for all these class guides over the last 2 freaking years. You're all amazing. It's thanks to you that these videos are some of the most popular on my entire channel. I want to give a massive shout out to my patrons and YouTube members. If you would like to join, click the join button below this video to support the channel monetarily and get your name on this cool list. Sincerely, y'all, it's been awesome, and we're not stopping anytime soon. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And until next time, no nat ones. Okay, battery, please don't die.